All right, I'm going to get started. Welcome everyone to session 3 of your IWRS training. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Over the next 3 hours, uh, you'll be learning more, even more, I'll say, about IWRS, the Illinois Works Reporting System. So the target audience for today is individuals accountable for data entry, data management, pre-apprenticeship program completion tracking, transition support, follow-up services, or any task related to cohort participants. Do you want to move this slide, please? Yeah. My name is Anna Bedard, Dr. Anna Bedard. I am one of the program analysts and coaches. So I'll be working with some of you along the way. And you've probably heard me say this before, just a little bit about me. I've been with the Illinois Works program for now I'm going on 3 months, so I'm new to the program. I am not new to nonprofits. I actually worked in nonprofits for a dozen or so years and then did capability building for nonprofits as co-founder of the Center for Nonprofit Effectiveness. And I did that for a number of years, then went to corporate. And now I'm really happy to be back in this space doing, really partnering with you to do this really important work of bringing people from underrepresented groups into the trades. And so I also want to introduce our other team members. We've got a great team of experts who are committed to supporting your success in this program. Dr. Norman Ruano is our leader. He is the Deputy Director of Illinois Works. He's not here today, but I'm sure you will all have a chance to meet him at the regional meeting that will be upcoming in May. Dan Martinez, who is one of the grant managers, will be also leading part of this meeting with me. Dan, you want to just say hi?
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy for you all to be here and looking forward to the session today.
Great. Monica Pruitt is another one of your grant managers. Monica, you want to say hi?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining.
And then we've got Dr. Gia Suggs, who is another one of the program analysts and program coaches. Gia?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome.
And Dr. Jeff Doolittle is our virtual production coordinator.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Glad to be with you.
And then we have one other training analyst and program coach who is not with us this morning, and that is Dr. Vera Lee Robinson. So, before I actually, let me just go quickly on the next slide through what we're doing today. We're talking about IWRS, the Illinois Works Reporting System, which was created by the Office of Illinois Works in partnership with Southern Illinois University's Center for Workforce Development. And the system allows you to track key information about participant progress during the program. So today we'll be talking about IWRS, the navigation instructions, training services, and additional system tools. So what we're doing today is talk about the role of IWRS, explaining the relationship between it and the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. You'll be learning how to utilize the icons on the navigation bar, navigating the IWRS main page, navigating here's the heart of it, the participant recruitment and engagement tabs and subtabs, and updating and adding partner engagement. So that's what we're covering. So it's the next click on your IWRS learning. So recording, please note that this session is being recorded and will be made available for review on the Illinois Works Partner Guide. So the link to that guide is being available added to the chat. If it isn't there now, it will be very shortly. And so then lastly, just any questions before we proceed to the next section. I just want to say with that Illinois Works Partner Guide, if you have not already done so, please save the tab in your browser because you'll be wanting to go back there frequently through the course of the year. If there's no questions, we'll just move to the next section where what we'll be doing very briefly is just going through the WebEx features. So let's move forward with that. But before I go to that, this link will also be added to the chat shortly. Just know that anytime you need to talk to us, obviously you have your grant manager's information. Always feel free to reach out to them. Once we are, as coaches, get our assignments, we'll be reaching out to you. You can always talk to us, but you can always contact ceo.illinoisworks@illinois.gov, and that will go. We will be able to respond to you that way as well. So that is also in the chat. So, you know what? Before we do this, Jeff, can I ask you to first do the WebEx tutorial, and then we'll come back because I want to first show you so that we can make sure that everybody get in the chat. And so you can see here, and I think you have some arrows here across the bottom are your controls. So please, if you could stay on mute when you're not speaking, please feel free to come off mute if you need to ask a question. That's great. Then there's the video. So if you want to come on camera or go back off camera, you can click the stop or it'll toggle to start video. I'd like everyone to practice raising their hands because I want to check in with people and we're going to actually use this today. So can everybody raise your hand, please? Let's see. I'm going to wait for people to raise your hands. You can see that your hand raise button is there across the bottom. And I see we have some people on the phone. I get it if you can't raise your hand. But if you are on your computer, if you could please raise your hand. I'm going to wait for people to find that. This is also a nice thing to do. If you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. What happens is you come up the top so we can kind of see you more easily. See, there's some people who have not raised their hands. So I'm going to just ask if you, all right, so Gia is raising her hand. Yay, hi Gia. So if you, I want to get a sense of if everybody here has been to one of the two sessions that we did last week on IWRS. Whenever now I can't remember exactly, maybe it was the week before, but if this is your first time in an IWRS session, would you keep your hand raised? And if you have not, if this is not your first rodeo, right? If you were in one of the other ones on IWRS, please lower your hand. And you do that by just clicking on the same button. So I'm going to click on mine so my hand goes down. But if this is your first time in an IWRS session, please keep your hand raised. So that's really helpful for us to know as we go along. Okay. Thank you so much, Ashley and Chastity, for letting us know if that's not correct. If you're like, no, I just can't figure out how to let it down, then then you can just put it in the chat for us. But that's great because that means we'll make sure to cover a couple things. All right, let's go back a slide so we could do introductions. So the chat. So the chat is also at the bottom and it's all the way to the right. So if you haven't already brought up your chat, please click on a little bubble, just like on your phone, little bubble so you can open up your chat. And please introduce yourself, your name, your organization, your role, and your geographic location. We just want to see who all is in the room. And you can add an asterisk next to your name if you have attended one. you can add 1 or 2 or 3 asterisks, depending on if you attended previous sessions. Ashley, Patricia, welcome. The Y, Chastity from ABC in Springfield. We've got Kevin from the Y, Jackie from, oh, I can't read this fast. It's going. Jocelyn, great to see you. Katrina, Ashley, Cherie, Kiara, excuse me. Shubra, Peggy, Tina, Patricia, Susan. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your names. Maxine, Roger, welcome. Got folks from community assistance programs and IWE, Lewis University, from the the Women's Innovation Group, great. The Y, we've got YMCA here. Great. It's great to see all of you. I see most of you we've had on with us before. Welcome back. And for those who are new, welcome to you. So let's move forward. And just any last questions or comments before I do a very brief introduction to IWRS? Great, let's move forward. All right, good. I just want to give you super high level, talk about what the purpose of IWRS is and explain the relationship between IWRS and the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. So many of you were introduced to IWRS during the January administrator orientation. And that session was tailored to administrators, which focused on provider information, managing users, specific reporting tools. So this session is tailored to individuals responsible for participant intake, training services and specific reporting tools. All right, so that's who we're focused on today. Hopefully that's you. IWRS, what is IWRS? It is our data management and reporting system. It is designed to allow you to track pre-apprenticeship program activities. It is our internal facing system for compliance reporting. So you're putting things into the system and our grant managers can see it, and we can, then make sure that you're on track, help you if you need help. It is required of all grantees that you enter data into IWRS in real time as activities occur. So it doesn't have to be the minute after, but at least weekly, you should be updating your information in IWRS. And our grant managers can only use information that's in IWRS to verify if you're progressing toward your goals. So it's not going to be helpful if you're sending them messages and saying, oh, hey, I know it's not in IWRS, but we did it. It's not helpful. They can only use what's in IWRS. I'll say it again, you've heard it before. If it's not in IWRS, it didn't help. It didn't happen, excuse me. So please enter it into IWRS. So we designed it, as I mentioned before, in partnership with Southern Illinois University's Center for Workforce Development, and the system launched in February of 2022. The system just allows programs to track key information about participants' progress throughout their engagement with the program, including application, enrollment, announcements, career and support service assessments, enrollment and training modules, attendance, training completion, transition, post follow-up, post-completion, right? Pre-apprenticeship program inquiries, participants, grantee partnerships, so the whole world of it. And it's aligned with our pre-apprenticeship life cycle. And so you've probably seen this before. The life cycle, this is the life cycle of a participant going through the program. And each stage demonstrates an integral step in preparing participants to enroll in a DOL registered apprenticeship program. So given this, your program will be inputting its data into IWRS based on this cycle. For example, and so then we can see like the results that we were tracking according to this cycle. And so what's popping up for you is data collected from IWRS. This was as of January 29th, and it really covers actually since we started the program. We've had over 1,400 inquiries. We've had over 3,500 applicants. We've enrolled over 2,200 people. Almost 1,500 of those have completed the program. We've transitioned 1,100. We're actively tracking 200. Oh, this is, you know what, my dialogue here. I'm not looking at the screen. I'm looking at my other one. So this is great. Love it. So as you can see, real time, it's being updated. And so it's great, right? Because then I love seeing the slide because it just, you know, you work so hard. We work so hard. It's just great to get present to the difference that you're making, right? And that we're making together. And collectively, we are greater than the sum of our parts. So thank you for all of the work that you do. To move on to talk about the Illinois Works Grantee Manual, this is your resource for instructions, for guidance, for tools, for expectations, for program design, implementation, and delivery. This is, not to be sacrilegious, your Bible for this program with a small b. This is everything you need. Please use this. If you have a question, you can go first to your grantee manual. It's great that it's electronic, so you could do a word search. You can look at the table of contents and find what you're looking for. And the link should be in the chat. If not, it's coming. And please save this so that you always have it handy. Keep in mind that you can also get the manual through going through the partner guide online. And yeah, so that's what I'll say about that. Any questions or comments before I pass it over to Dan Martinez, who is going to, he'll start off by getting you signed into IWRS.
Well, thank you, Anna.
All righty.
All right. So as Anna just mentioned, we're going to talk about starting into IWRS or signing into IWRS. And by the end of this section, you'll understand some of the different roles we're going to cover that are in IWRS, different ways to sign into IWRS and access the reporting system. So if you have never signed into IWRS, your first stop should be with your program administrator. They're the ones that will provide you with access. And then if you're having difficulty, then you can reach out to your grant manager. So some of the roles that we had talked about, there's the service provider role, and that's going to be the majority of individuals in your organization. They're going to have access to grantee participant information and some of the dashboards and a few other reports. Then there's the service provider program administrators, and they're going to have access not only to the participant information, but they're also going to have access at the grantee level to do kind of global changes to their profile, and then some specific reports and generally user administrative access as well. So they can add users, as I was just mentioning, they can delete access, things like that. And then there's what's called a super administrator, and that's really the Office of Illinois Works and the SIU staff that will have access to some different privileges and reports and verification tools. So to begin accessing IWRS, there are several different ways. What you see on the screen right now is a way to create your Illinois workNet access. So if you didn't have IWRS access yet, you would first need to make sure you have an Illinois workNet account. IWRS, the Illinois Works Reporting System, is built on Illinois workNet. So in order to have access to IWRS, you first need to have an Illinois workNet account. So you'd go to illinoisworknet.com, click on that sign up button that is outlined in red there, and then a new page would appear for the Illinois workNet registration. You would fill that out, and then you would provide that information to your program administrator, your obviously first and last name, the email address you just used to sign up, the date of birth you entered in there to sign up, and your zip code. And they would then be able to link your Illinois workNet account to an IWRS profile under their grant or under your grant. Okay, so once everyone had completed that step, then you can actually access IWRS. And there are 3 ways of doing it. 2 fairly complicated ways and 1 direct link. So I certainly prefer the direct link method. One way of getting there is through Illinois workNet. Well, starting at Illinois workNet, and you would simply go to illinoisworknet.com. You could log in right there, but you'd still be on the main page, and you would scroll down until you get to state partner resources. You would probably have to expand the view, so you see outlined there. It says view more, and then you would access the Illinois Works portal. That would actually take you to our partner guide, right? So if you ever lose that link for the partner guide, here's a way of getting it. You can go to illinoisworknet.com. That's a fairly easy thing to remember. You don't even need to bookmark that. But then you could still find the partner guide through illinoisworknet.com. Once you're on the partner guide, if you can go to the next screen, that will take you to the ability to just access the Illinois Works reporting system. And so you could select it there, and it would take you to a group section where you would select ILWRS. You may have other groups depending, but that would be one way of getting it. The second way of accessing IWRS would be again from Illinois workNet. But this time you would log in directly to IWRS. You would go to, after signing in, you would select My Dashboard. And you see on the screen here, there are 2 parts to the dashboard. On the left, you see in either red or orange, Personal Tools. On the right, in blue, Partner Tools. This would be considered a partner tool. And the very first icon there is 3 people, and it's underneath it, it says Customer Support Center, IWIS. That is the Illinois Works reporting system. So that would take you to the Illinois Works information system, where again, you would select ILWRS under a group search. Okay, all that being said, there is still a direct link. And so that had already been put in the chat. On my chat screen, it says 9:51. Monica entered a chat or a link that will take you directly into IWRS. So you could ignore all that and just go directly into IWRS. So do we have any questions about how to access IWRS?
We don't have anything in the chat, Dan.
Okay. Again, we covered this pretty extensively last time, and I think 99% of the people in attendance have seen that before. And the 1 or 2 people that haven't do now have that direct link in the chat. So I'm not going to go through all those different ways of doing it. Some people have said that gets a little confusing. So the bottom line is, click on the link in the chat, bookmark that, and that will take you directly into IWRS every time. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Module 5 at this point. So jumping into IWRS, we are going to look at navigating through the main page and looking and updating provider information. So when you access IWRS, and if you haven't already logged into IWRS, you're welcome to do this and kind of follow along, but it's not necessary. We're just going to be kind of visually looking at a couple of things right now, but then we will also take a look at adding those partner engagements. But what you see on your screen right now is highlighted in or outlined in red is what we refer to as the navigation bar. This navigation bar is present on all screens. So it doesn't matter if you go into a participant profile or if you go into reports, you'll still see this navigation bar. Now, not everyone will have the same icons in their navigation bar. As I mentioned, we have different levels of access. So the program administrator access is going to have a couple of icons that the service provider will not have. But we're going to walk through them and discuss them right now anyway. Starting from left to right, you'll first notice that there's an Illinois Works logo there, right next to an Illinois WorkNet logo. And by clicking on either of those, that will take you back to the Illinois WorkNet main page. So if you ever need to back out of IWRS and go into the main page, you can click on that. If you click on it accidentally, you can just hit the back button on your browser and it'll take you back into Illinois Works. So then the next item is dashboards. It's kind of in the center of the screen. When you select the dashboard, click on that or click on the down arrow, you should see one or two options. The first one is assessments. The second is the Illinois Works reporting system dashboard. Again, these were covered in the last session, so if you want more information on these, you can view the recording on IWRS session 2. But the bottom line is that our program does not use the assessment, but if you choose to, you can use the Illinois Works reporting system dashboard just as a visual indicator. But again, it's not one of the reports that we typically recommend or use at this time. The next section is the groups function. So a lot of times when you were logging in, I mentioned that you'll go to the group search page and you'll need to select ILWRS. The direct link allows you to bypass that, but if for whatever reason you are maybe in the report section or you've closed out some other tabs and you want to come back to this main page, underneath the dashboard, you can see it says participant recruitment and engagement, and it has a search for a name. That's what we refer to as the name page. So if you're ever somewhere in IWRS and you want to come back to this page, you could click on the groups, reselect Illinois Works, and then it will take you back to this main page. Then I'm going to move past some of the other icons because again, those are more provider level icons and we discussed them in session 2. The last item you should see, it should say hi and then your username. We see on the screen here, it says hi GS Suggs. And when you click on the down arrow next to that name, you'll see several different options. My partner dashboard, help request, Illinois WorkNet, Illinois WorkNet messages. We don't use most of those, and also the ability to log out, of course. Other than logging out, we don't use most of those, except for the help request. So this is how you can submit a help ticket and get assistance if something in Illinois Works reporting system is not working the way you thought it might. And that is only accessible, that help request is only accessible from this drop-down menu on participant screens. So once you move into reports or some other screens, you may not have access to that help request. So I would suggest navigating back to a participant screen such as this one. Again, you can do that by clicking on groups and then selecting ILWRS, and then you'll have access to that to the help desk again to submit a ticket. All right, looking at this main page still, you can see that we are on the participant recruitment and engagement tab. There's also a partner engagement and management tab, and then a work plan and report tab. The partner recruitment and engagement tab is what we refer to as the main page. This is where you will start probably 99% of the time. It's where you access individual participant profiles. You can access information by status or by a specific participant name. So if we look at it, there is the name field, so you can type a first name, a last name, a full name, the intermediary / provider. So that would be you, your organization. For most of you, it might just default to the only grant that you have and operate in IWRS and with the Office of Illinois Works. For others, you may have multiple locations, multiple grants, and so you'll need to select that drop down each time. And then the customer status, so enrolled, inquiries, applicants, a completion status, things like that. Once you've selected whatever it is your search criteria is, you'd obviously click on the search button, and it will bring up the profiles of the person or people that you're searching for. There's an export button, which allows you to download key information about the participants that have populated in that search. So if you don't search for anybody and you just go with everyone that populates on a given provider page, then the export report will download all of the entire grantees, participants. If you had searched just for people named Tom, maybe there's 3 of them, and you hit click search, it's only going to download the Toms in your search. So that's how you use the export report. And then there's a student support needs report, which allows users to access red flags for participant attendance or post-assessment scores. We're going to talk more about this later in the session. And then finally, to the right of those 3 blue buttons is the add participant. And this allows you to add participants into the pre-apprenticeship program. So they start as inquiries, and they move then into as applicants, depending on whether their interest level is there or not, depending on whether you are able to accept them into your program and they actually start attendance. Then you can move them to an enrolled status. All of that information is in the grant manual, so it's important to make sure you have an understanding of the different statuses per the Illinois Works Grant Manual. So the next tab there is the Partner Engagement and Management tab. This allows you to add and track partner information. So Illinois Works requires grantees to engage with a range of partners, particularly for wraparound services, transition services, and also potentially student support services. Grantees are required to track the different partners that they have engaged with in IWRS. If you have like a CRM type system, a relationship management system internally that you use, you can document your engagements with your partners there, but we still ask that you enter the partner information so we know which partners you're engaging with. So when you select this partner tab, then you will notice that 3 sub-tabs have appeared. So partner, that allows you to add the partners or search among existing partners. Engagement, which allows you to track different engagements with partners and add contact notes. And then the 3rd sub-tab is contact notes. So if a note has been provided through an engagement, this is where you would then view those notes. So the partner sub-tab, if we look at that, has 2 fields, and it has an ability to search for a name and, again, your provider information. So this field allows you to search for a specific partner by name or access all of the partners that have been added by your organization. So again, your organization is that intermediary / provider field. In order to add a partner, you'll click on the Add Partner button. Oh, we're going a little, there we go. So you'd click on that Add Partner button, and a pop-up window would appear. I think the next slide shows that pop-up. Nope, it didn't show it. All right, so it would provide a pop-up button where you would simply add that partner information. The next sub-tab, which is where we just were, the engagement sub-tab, this is where you can begin adding engagements. So any sort of professional interaction, meetings, phone calls, speaking invitations. Maybe you've requested that they come to a workshop where you're going to be doing mock interviews, and some of your partners are going to come and engage your participants in mock interviews. There's a lot of different ways you can work with your partners, and this is where you could record those engagements. And to add an engagement, you would simply click on add engagement, and again a pop-up form would appear. You would select the partner from the drop-down list. Again, you had added that partner on the previous sub-tab. Enter the service that they're providing, the engagement date, and you would simply add that into the IWRS. If there's additional information that needs to be tracked, again, that contact note can be provided as well. So that's the final sub-tab. This allows you to search all the contact notes that have been entered already. This is not where you would add them. Again, that would be added as part of the engagement, but you can search by partner name, the subject, the comment itself, or even the user who entered the contact notes. So that's the different ways to search through those. The third and final tab that we're going to discuss on this main page is the work plan and report function. This outlines program dates and outcome metrics. So it's really based on the work plan that is ultimately approved for your organization. Your grant manager will enter the start and end dates for each cohort, the number of expected enrollments, completions, and transitions, and it will allow you to view where you currently stand in relation to those goals. So any questions before we proceed to the next section? I'm going to go ahead and make my screen live so that I can walk through those somewhat quickly, just so that we can get that additional detail.
We don't have any questions in the chat, Dan.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let me share my screen. Okay, so as I mentioned, here we are on the main tab. As a super admin, I do have access to all the different providers here, but we also have a test provider account, so that's the one I like to stay on typically. As I mentioned, we have a lot of different search items here. I can first go to just the individuals that maybe have completed and are in transition on my account, so those will come up. And as I mentioned, if I click export, we demonstrated this in session 2, so I'll go, you can view that for more detail, but there are different items here that you can then select to export, and I think almost 50 different ones. And when you click export, it will generate a CSV file, which is essentially an Excel file that you'll then be able to use to manipulate the data or look at and view the data however you want. That export report is the one that your grant managers use most frequently when we're pulling compliance on a monthly basis to evaluate the data that has been entered into the system, and primarily to get an understanding of which participants you have in what status. So we like to see, okay, well, who do they actually have in an enrolled status? And we might download that report. Obviously, you can do the same thing. We mentioned, let's see here. We mentioned this student support needs report. I'm not going to click on it because it takes us to a different screen, and we're trying to stay on this main screen right here. But that's the one that will provide you with kind of a high level overview of who has flags, who has attendance flags, meaning that they are under 80% of their attendance for a given training module, or who has a post-assessment flag, meaning they have an under a 70% score for their post-assessment for a given training module. And then we talked about adding a participant. I will note that everyone should have a test participant in an applicant status. If you already have your test participant in an enrolled status, that's fine. We're actually going to be walking through everyone through moving them to an enrolled status, because this session builds on session 2. So if you have not added a participant, if you weren't part of session 2, you'll just, watch us and follow along. I would recommend you go back and watch session 2 and maybe create a test participant for yourself. As a reminder, whenever you create a test participant, please ensure that the last name is test. So you can name the first name whatever you want. I always recommend you make it relevant to yourself. So a family member or a friend, that way, if there are several people in an organization and they're all creating test accounts, you know which ones you're using or you have, you're progressing through, but all of them should be labeled. They should have the last name of test. All right. So then we walked through the other tabs, the partner engagement and management tab. As we mentioned, that there are 3 sub-tabs here. We're starting with the partner sub-tab, and that is where you can enter. Let's see, let me get to my Chicago test provider. You can enter partners for use in setting up engagements or just recording your interactions with them. For the most part, for anybody you're entering in here, you should probably have an MOU or some sort of agreement or written agreement or contract with. We're looking for you to establish formal, partnerships with the different organizations, because again, per the grantee manual, all organizations are required to provide supportive services, specific supportive services to the participants. So everyone must, share or provide, child care or family member care resources, right? That doesn't mean you need to provide, elder care services or child care services, but maybe you need to engage with a partner so that when you get a participant that might have trouble attending your program because they care for an elderly family member or because they have a child at home that they're solely responsible for, that you can help point them to organizations that can assist them so that they can come to the training with the peace of mind knowing that their loved one is cared for. So things like that, that's what you want to engage these partners with and have a formal agreement with. And we want to see them then entered here. And we talked about adding partners. Again, it's just a standard form. Anything with a red asterisks, you're going to need to enter. And then once you've filled that out, you simply click add partner information. Then once you have partners established, you can go to the engagement sub-tab. So that's here. And you can, again, you're going to select, if you have multiple, grants, you're going to select the one you're working with and for. And then here are a list of the different engagements that I have. If I need to add a new engagement, I would simply add it, and then it would drive down from the partners that have already been added. And then I would select the type of support service that they're providing and the date. And then I would simply click add that engagement. So one way a lot of organizations are encouraged to use this is if you engage with contractors and you know that they have, maybe programs or they have hiring opportunities. So those are things that you can also put in here to ensure that your participants kind of have a path after graduation. Certainly the number one point and transition that we're looking for is a transition into a registered apprenticeship program. So those can also be partners, and that we'd highly encourage you to include those in this list as well. And then the third and final sub-tab are contact notes, and that's for, again, this is where you would search for those contact notes that have already been entered as part of engagements that we saw previously. All right, I know I went through a lot there. Are there any questions about what we've seen here? I'm going to hand this screen back over to to Jeff there. Any questions about that walkthrough of IWRS?
No questions in the chat at this time.
Okay. All right. We may be taking a break a little bit later. I'm going to get started in module 6. Module 6 is kind of a long module, so we'll see maybe if we can get through all of it and then take a break, or if we can maybe take a break halfway through. So but I just want everyone to be aware that we are mindful of that in the time. So we'll get started with module 6 though, training and services. By the end of this section, you'll be able to identify where content is located on the pre-apprenticeship life cycle, where the IWRS content is located. You'll be able to add and update training services, which is probably, the bulk of maybe 80% of data entry into IWRS. Updating and adding those attendance records at the grantee level, and completing a career assessment and creating a career plan. The career plans are really goals that are pre-established for you, but we'll show you that, and we'll take a look at the action log as well. So I'm just adjusting my screen here. Give me for a moment. Okay. So again, the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. In session 2, we covered the different phases in IWRS that reach the pre-apprenticeship life cycle, including outreach and recruitment, application, intake, and the beginning of wraparound and student support services. We learned how to access participant profiles, add a partner, add a participant, I should say, as a lead, complete a pre-screening assessment. I'm getting ahead of myself. Completing the pre-screen assessment, submitting that application, the IWRS application, and then uploading interviews, all of the things that need to happen as part of the intake cycle. And then if your role includes any of these tasks and you didn't attend IWRS session 2, again, definitely go to the partner guide and view that session. So we also, in session 3, we'll touch on a little bit more on wraparound services and stipend services, as well as the training steps in the pre-apprenticeship life cycle. So we do want to cover enrolling participants. Again, in session 2, everyone went through the process of the intake cycle, and that you can see on your screen. The intake tab is outlined there in red. We go from inquiry to applicant and then applicant to enrolled. We only move an individual into an enrolled status when they show up for their first training session, right? So essentially, somebody is an applicant, you've interviewed them, you've accepted them into the program, you've sent them an acceptance award letter, they've communicated back to you their intent to begin on March 18th, and so you would just hold them in that applicant status until March 18th. Then you have your orientation, and you take attendance and everyone that's there, and they complete all the tasks that evening, hopefully, or within 24 hours at the very least. You would then go into IWRS and enter this information and change their status to enrolled. You do that by clicking on the enrollment status button, and then you would receive this pop-up that you see on your screen, and you would change their status to enrolled, enter their social security number. That is an optional data entry. We do highly encourage it because, as hopefully you all know, anybody that participates in this program will be part of a 10-year longitudinal study. We are going to track their progress and hopefully their journey to the trades and becoming a journey level tradesperson, and then being successful in their trade. So, and then if they don't, we're still going to track, are they employed? Have they successfully gone on to a career? So we're trying to look at the positive outcomes not just within a year of the program, but long term. And that social security number definitely helps us track them. But again, not required, but definitely helpful. Then you'll select the cohort that they'll be in. For most people, it would be the first cohort of the year, right? So cohort 1, 2024, and then select your enrollment date. So that is the date of that first training, that first orientation in class. So you might be entering it, as I mentioned, the next day, or in some cases, maybe something happened and somebody wasn't entered right away. You still want to enter the date that they actually enrolled. So that should be the first date of instruction. So you would click save, and IWRS would then pull the training profile information from cohort details, which we'll see in a little bit, and they will create a new tab in IWRS called Training Services. I'll show you that in a little bit. You'll be able to see it when we go through IWRS Live, and it'll make a little bit more sense. But a lot of things happen when you enroll somebody, and that's why we always say to hold that until you're actually sure that they've started IWRS. So back to the life cycle, we've talked about how the training portion is where you're going to spend a lot of your time and energy updating IWRS. So training is a process that aims to increase, obviously, the knowledge and skills, impact the attitudes or influence the behavior of the individuals that you've enrolled in order for them to accomplish the specific job task or goal. So the training should be focused on business needs and driven by time critical skills and knowledge. The goal is to impact and improve performance. And we give that definition as opposed to like more of a classroom knowledge and education, because that's more of a theoretical understanding of things. The Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program should be an immersive experience that provides training which aligns with the skills the employers, the contractors are going to need. And the grantees are expected to make sure that all of this is experiential training, right? Development by doing, and by training, tailoring their programs to employer needs, making sure that your graduates will meet the minimum entry-level requirements for a DOL registered apprenticeship program to support the participants' long-term professional goals is essential. It's important to know that the pre-apprenticeship curriculum must offer 177 hours of instruction. That's a minimum requirement for all grantees. And it's not to exceed 300 hours unless specifically approved by the Office of Illinois Works. So that's essentially the range. All of your organizations should have already negotiated the exact number that they're going to be providing on instruction. This is critical because it's tied to the stipends that the individuals will receive, which obviously is tied to your budget that's part of your executed grant agreement. So whatever number of hours your program has been authorized for, even if your final curriculum form hasn't been completed and approved, that is the number that your final curriculum form will be held to and ultimately approved for. The Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program requires certifications in first aid, CPR, OSHA 10, and then one of the nationally recognized programs. And currently there are 3 that we utilize. If someone comes to us with a 4th, we will certainly consider it, but it needs to be one that would be recognized on a national basis. The 3 that we utilize are Trade Futures MC3 curriculum, NCCER core curriculum, and ICCB, which is the Illinois Community College Board program. So community colleges can establish a construction curriculum that they submit to ICCB. ICCB then approves it as a college curriculum and certification. So that's how it becomes nationally recognized. There could be more certifications, certain programs based on their area, the community, the employers may include, like a forklift certification or a CDL certification or a flagger certification. But again, these three are the ones that are required by all programs. So after going back into IWRS, after a participant has been listed as enrolled, a training service tab will be added to the profile. And under that training service tab, there's a lot of sub-tabs that will appear. This is where the attendance, the post-assessment scores, supportive services like wraparound services, transition services, student support services, credentials are added, and stipends are documented. So the 5 sub-tabs that were created, you can see them underlined with arrows on your screen, are an overview. There's a review assessment. This and the next one is goal setting or set goals. Those two, review assessment and set goals, are actually not used by Illinois Works. Again, I want to point out it's most relevant during under this training and services tab, that IWRS is built on Illinois workNet. Illinois workNet has a lot of functionality, a lot of career planning type functionality, and that is not used in our program. There's a lot of reasons for it, but one thing to keep in mind is that as opposed to other programs that use Illinois workNet, our participants never use IWRS. So we never have them logging into IWRS. No, any data entry into IWRS is done by your program. So other features of Illinois workNet, do require participants to take their own career assessments live in Illinois workNet or update their resumes live in Illinois workNet. And we don't utilize those. So just keep that in mind. Some of those things are just a native part of Illinois workNet, and so they display on IWRS, but we don't use them. The 4th sub-tab is add steps and services, and we definitely use that. So the overview tab, that very first one, and the add steps services are the two that we use most often. And then there's an update log that we also use. So under that overview sub-tab that I mentioned that we use quite a bit, there are several distinct areas of the overview sub-tab. We see on the left a sidebar. This allows you to access key functions of IWRS, such as case notes. These are participant case notes. Uploads. So there's an entire document upload that are specific to that participant, like, their high school diploma or their, certification for first aid CPR once they achieve that, those types of things. There's also then to the right of the sidebar, assessments. Again, this is one that is not used for Illinois Works. Next to assessments in the center of the page is career path, desired career path. Again, one that we do not use. The third section there in the middle is accomplishments. This is used as a reference, just a visual tool. Essentially, it displays the number of earned credentials and services and goals that a individual has completed. So it can be used to dive deeper into those, but it's not used that frequently. But it's a good visual tool to see very quickly, well, how many credentials have we entered, and do we still have some more to go, or which ones have we entered, and you can explore that. And then at the bottom there, the final section to highlight, it says career plan, which again, that's just a title that is native to Illinois workNet. But that's really where all of the goals that we establish, a goal being another native word to Illinois workNet, that you'll be entering the data for your participant in. So that contains 5 goals. There's student support services. Those are academic services. Wraparound services. Those are barrier reduction services, things that would prevent a person from being able to attend the program, such as transportation issues or internet issues, childcare issues, digital literacy, things like that. Again, it's all in the grantee manual. Documenting transition services, assisting participants with their career plans, their resume, interview skills, training services, of course. So all of your training modules will be ultimately located there. And then your stipend, your program stipend data entry. All right, so looking in a little bit more detail on that sidebar, there's also information about your participants, so you can always see, well, whose profile am I on? You can barely see it on this screen, but it shows that it's Tiger Woods and the email address, the date of birth. You can expand it to see a couple more pieces of information. There's also below that, it says related instructions. If you click on that, it'll actually bring up a PDF of how to navigate the overview page. So these are tools that Southern Illinois University has written into IWRS to make it more user-friendly and assistive to you as users. And then, as I mentioned, below that are the participant summary tools, things like case notes and uploads. All right, there we go. It has outlined case notes for us. If you were to click on the case note button from this screen, it would actually open up a new screen for you where it would allow you to enter case notes. Here we can see it. You can search for case notes, add case notes. Sometimes you'll notice in IWRS that the system requires you to enter a case note. So currently, when you're changing the status of one of the services, whether it's a wraparound service or a transition service, it's going to request that you enter a case note. We're actually going to be refining that a little bit. We only really need to see a case note when it's something unexpected. So right now, it does require a case note, I believe, when you successfully complete something, but we're going to remove that because obviously we know why they successfully completed it. We've asked you to enter attendance and post assessments and credentials, right? But if they're unsuccessful and they didn't complete it, or if it was evaluated and determined that they did not need it, well, then we'd like to know why. So it will automatically ask you to enter a case note. But what I'm highlighting here is that you could also go directly to the case note screen and directly add case notes, just information about the participant, something that happened, something that they've asked you to keep in mind as an organization to assist them, something that the grant managers or the Office of Illinois Works should be aware of regarding this participant. All of those can be entered in as case notes. All right. I also mentioned under this participant summary tools, uploads. So we have an upload screen or upload section. It's a document repository. Very often, as you go through IWRS, there will be sections or areas where you're asked to upload a document. So for example, as you're going through the intake section, you'll actually be prompted to upload the diploma under intake. You'll be prompted to upload the interview sheets under intake. Once you've done that, they will appear there and that task will appear completed on the intake tab, but ultimately those will also display on your uploads. So it's a nice way of having a single area that you can go to view any uploads that were done for a given participant. But just be clear that you shouldn't necessarily go here to upload all of the documents, because some of the documents are required to be uploaded in certain sections, like the diploma, like the interview sheets, etc. But ultimately, when you do go to complete somebody and they have their first aid certification, their OSHA 10 certification, this is where you'll upload those PDFs. All right. See, on our next screen, we had talked about the career plan overview and how there are instructions. That's what we're seeing outlined in red there. You can click on that and it will provide you with information on the overview tab itself. So we're going to go ahead and go to the next screen. Okay, now it's highlighting the career plan. These are the 5 goals I mentioned: training services, wraparound services, student support services, transition services, and stipends. Next to each of those goals in blue is linked text. It says show next steps. So you can click on that to expand each of the goals, and that will show you all of the services that are under that goal. So obviously, if you click on the show next steps next to your transition services goal, it'll show you any transition services that that participant was given. So I mentioned before, maybe they had one-on-one interview assistance or resume assistance. And I should point out to everyone here that because this has confused some grantees in the past, your employability skills course or some other course that you have, your instruction may include resume writing, right? Or it might include, interview skills. Those belong in the training services. That's obviously, it's part of your curriculum. The transition service of resume assistance or interview assistance, those are more considered to be one-on-one assistance. So maybe that you had your employability skills where everyone went through a resume writing course and everyone wrote a resume, but now that participant comes back to you the next day or a couple weeks later and says, hey, that course on resume writing was great. I've updated mine a little bit. Can you take a look at it? And then you schedule a one-on-one time to sit down with them and go through it. That would be a transition service that was then provided. So it's a kind of a follow-up to the curriculum, but not the curriculum itself. And even if that was a smaller group setting, maybe there are 5 people that you work with at once. It doesn't have to be, solely one-on-one, but it's definitely not part of the stipendable instruction that's in the curriculum. Okay. So as I mentioned, when you enroll somebody, it will populate this entire tab, the training services tab, and it'll populate your training services and any wraparound services that were selected. None of the new grantees have that set up yet, because we still need to finalize your final curriculum forms. We still need to update IWRS with that exact information. I'm going to show you a little bit of that later today or this morning. So that won't auto-populate for you, but that's also why it's important to not move anyone into, other than these test participants, into enrolled status, until that has been updated on your grant level. Okay. When you need to manually add a service. So typically we're talking about student support services and transition services, and sometimes wraparound services. You will do so by going to the Add Steps/Services subtab, and that will bring up the screen that you see here. And it's set up into steps. So step 1 would be to add a service. So you'd click on that blue button. This window would appear. You would select the service that you want to add, and then you would click add, and it would populate that into step 2. So then the system will ask you to assign the service to the correct goal. For more information on which specific categories goals should go into, definitely review section 6 of the 2024 grantee manual, and that will provide you with guidance to understand what's a wraparound service, what's a student support service, and other areas of the grantee manual will talk about transition services or training services. Again, for the most part, training services will not need to be added. Those should be added by your grant manager and will pre-populate just upon entering enrollment. So it's not something you need to do on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so after you click on that add, you'll notice here that alumni networking was added into step 2. So what you'll do then, well, first of all, if you made a mistake, you could click X there and get rid of it. But if you are ready to move forward with that alumni networking as a transition service, you would click on the blue pencil, and it would then go to a new screen. It would take you directly into that service. So you'd start at the service status default tab, and you would be able to add the planned start and end dates. You would, of course, select the appropriate goal. So in this case, you would select transition services, because the system in and of itself doesn't know that alumni networking, say, is a transition service. You would add in some cases, it might ask you the number of hours. It shouldn't, because only training services require hours. So if it ever would, you would just enter 0, because again, no, we don't take attendance for any service other than a training service. And then you would update that customer service. As I mentioned before, a case note may populate. Jeff, can we go to the next screen? There we go. Here it asks for a case note. And then it would populate into that case note section that I had already shown you. All right, the final item that we're going to discuss on the training and services is the 5th subtab, the update log. Not used very frequently, but it does record every action taken on a participant's training profile. So it records the action taken, the date and timestamp, and the user that took that action. So obviously, even more detailed information is available through programming. The help desk can always identify who made changes, but this is an easy way for users to be able to view how changes were made. And you can see there in this example that most recently that alumni networking was added into the services. So the update log recorded that. Okay, I am going to go through and we're going to show this live. A lot of times that's a little bit easier to see. So, but do you have any questions before I jump back into IWRS and we take a look at that?
So far, there are no questions.
Okay. All right, and we'll get to the hands-on section in a little bit. That will, I think, help everyone stay a little bit more focused and get a little bit better feel for IWRS once we get to that section. But let me go ahead and share my screen again. Okay. Okay, so one of the first things that I talked about, just so that you can play along with your test individual, is that we first need to locate that test individual. So as I mentioned before, hopefully you don't have that many people in your profile here, so you probably can just select them. But if you had left them off as applicant status, you could just search for all the applicants. If you, again, their last name should be test. So, you could just do that and it will narrow it down. And then you can select your test participant. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. And notice up here that we only have 4 tabs: overview, intake, program completion, and progress report. We're missing right here that training tab. And so I'm going to go ahead and enroll this individual. So I go to the intake tab and I'm going to scroll down to this add enrollment status. You'll notice here that I haven't, this is a test person, I haven't done really any of the required features for actually, performing an intake. But I'm going to, for the purpose of our test, or practice here, I'm going to add an enrollment status and select enrolled. As I mentioned before, social security number can be entered, cohort ID and enrollment date. So I'm going to enter the cohort as cohort 1, FY24. And the enrollment date, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say that they actually enrolled on January 8th. I'm going to click save. And now you'll notice that they are now part of my table. So anytime that I change an enrollment status, that it will populate into this table and I'll be able to see that history. You'll notice here that it shows the date that I performed this action, but it also records the actual enrollment date. All right. Also, now when I come back and I, let's see, refresh my screen, I now have that 5th tab up here, training services. So I can move to training services. And now let me pause right here. For those of you that have a test profile, were you able to log into IWRS and follow along with me just now to set up that, to change your individual to enrolled? I guess, let me ask it a different way. Is there anyone that was not able to do that and needs me to go back through the those steps? Because I want everyone to have their test participant in an enrolled status. So go ahead and place that in the chat. Is there anyone that needs me to review those steps? So just type, please review, or my test person is still an applicant. Please review. Okay. Let me, we'll start here. Let me minimize this. Ah, wrong button. Okay. I'm going to start at the overview, and I'm going to take my applicant, and we're here at the overview screen. Again, this is a different one. I'm just pulling, I have multiple tests, people that I create all the time to walk grantees through different things. But you'll notice, again, there is not a training tab here. But when I select the intake tab, I'll move down to step 3, which is enter enrollment status. I'll click and add enrollment status. I'll choose enrolled. These other statuses, they are very important. I highly encourage you to read the different status definitions in the grantee manual, because you may be required to select one of these for your actual participant when the time comes. Essentially, they have to be able, the eligibility requirements are that they're over 18, they're an Illinois resident, that they have a high school diploma or equivalent, and that they're interested in construction. So those first 3 things, Illinois resident, over 18, high school, if they're not able to provide that in some way, you generally are going to have to select one of these 3 not enrolled statuses, and based on the definitions in the grantee manual. But again, for purpose of today's practice, we're selecting enrolled, we're selecting cohort 1, and then you're putting in whatever enrollment date you want. You're clicking save. And then that enrollment is now displayed here. Okay. Is there anyone that still has somebody in an applicant status. We'll give you about 20 seconds to enter that into the chat. And actually, what I'm going to do, we're going to go ahead and move on. If you're still having difficulty in the chat, please reach out to David Garvey. He is with the help desk, essentially. He's with Southern Illinois University. They are the stewards of, obviously, Illinois WorkNet, but then also the Illinois Works reporting system. And he has graciously provided his time today. So if you need assistance in the chat, select David Garvey and send him a message. Okay. So everyone should now be in an enrolled status, but you'll notice that you might still only have these 4 tabs. So you can go to whatever refresh button you have on your browser, refresh, and that will then update, and now you'll have the training services tab. Okay, I'm going to select that training services tab, and I'm going to walk through this overview of the training services tab. So again, here we're on this tab, and I mentioned that there are 5 sub-tabs: the plan overview, the review assessment, which we don't use, set goals, which we don't use, the add steps and services, which is where you will add a service if necessary, and then the update log, which quite frankly, we very rarely use, but it just shows you any updates or who did what update in IWRS. So staying on the plan overview sub-tab, on the left here, we have our profile and some information there. You can expand it where it says see all here and expand and get more information. Not sure why you would need that information from this tab, so I usually keep that closed. I mentioned that SIU has provided instructions, so that's a great resource here if you need more information or would like to learn more information or learn more about this tab. And then there's the participant summary tools. So for the most part, we're only using case notes and uploads from here, but you can explore and look at different things in IWRS on your own. When you do select case notes, I always pick the wrong one. When you just select case notes, a new window will appear, and this is where the case notes can be entered. You would click add case note, and you would select the information, fill this out. One thing to notice when you are filling out a case note, it requires you to decide what's the purpose of this case note. Are you sending this as an Illinois WorkNet message? Do you want this to go as an email to the customer? Or are you just saving this into IWRS? That is by far the most common. So almost every time you're going to, again, select the type, the date, the subject, add an explanation of what the case note is, and then select save the case note without sending a message or an email. And then you would click add case note, and that would put the case note through. Okay, as I mentioned, it created another tab. So I'm just going to close this tab, and it'll take me back to my original tab. I mentioned this on the last training session. I'll mention it again. If you leave multiple IWRS tabs open, eventually one of the tabs you opened but are no longer using will time out, and that will time out all of your tabs. So it's best practice to close tabs when you're not using them. Then staying on this plan overview, we talked about this middle section here where we have assessments, career path, and accomplishments. We do not use assessments. We do not use the career path and accomplishments. It's helpful because it does identify the number of credentials that are entered. Again, unless your organization has requested something differently on the front end, most organizations are going to simply have the 3 required credentials. So first aid, CPR, OSHA 10, and then either MC3, NCCR Core, or whatever the name of their ICCB certification is. So that's a quick visual to see whether or not all of your credentials have been entered. Then I mentioned upon enrolling, the system not only created this tab, but then also created the 5 goals, they're called, that are required for the program. So we have training services, program stipend, wraparound services, student support services, and transition services. I do want to note, again, as a practice, I just went ahead and enrolled this individual. I had not completed on the intake their wraparound service assessment. If I had, this would have been pre-populated with any services that that individual had requested. Now, they may have answered all of those service assessment questions in a way in which indicated they didn't need any assistance. Maybe they have a child at home, but one of their siblings will be able to watch their child while they're in this program. And so they said, yes, I have a child, but yes, I also have a family member that can support me, so I don't need assistance. So nothing would appear here. Later, they may come back and say, you know what? My brother just got a new job. He's not going to be able to assist me with childcare. I'm going to need some support. That's when you would add manually an additional wraparound service, just like we had talked about adding student support services and transition services, as they go through the program. All right, I'm going to stay with training services though for a moment and show you. I mentioned that your final curriculum form needs to be approved, and essentially IWRS needs to be set up to mirror that. This is why. Any training services that are on your final curriculum form will populate into your training goal. And so as I mentioned, this is where you're really going to spend 80% of your data entry time, updating this information, updating attendance, post assessments, adding credentials, things like that. You'll notice some of these have start and end dates. That's because those were pre-established at the grantee level, and we're going to see that, as I mentioned, in the next hour of this training. So the ones that didn't, unfortunately, get set up in advance, now the data entry coordinator is going to have to enter those dates for every single training module 6 on every single participant in that cohort. Conversely, since OSHA 10 was set up and first aid CPR was set up at the grantee level, this is not going to be anything that the data entry coordinator is going to have to do again, unless something has changed, right? But otherwise, all of this just transferred over and will pre-populate into every single person, whether you add 5 people into a cohort or 150 people into a cohort. All of that information will carry over with the click of a button. So that's the nice part about setting up your cohort in advance. Okay, let's see here. I think we had gone through the enrolled. Let's see, I just want to make sure I'm covering everything in this section before I move on to the next section. I wanted to go over the adding a service. So again, training services pre-populate, and you don't need to add those manually. Some wraparound services will be covered during the initial wraparound assessment. Anything that they've requested and opted into will flow here automatically. But later in the program, if they need other wraparound services, or certainly as you engage them with required training or transition services or if you come across student support services, which are academic needs, then those need to be manually added. And this is where we do that. Again, I've gone back up to our sub-tabs. We've stayed here. Remember, I said we don't use this one. We don't use this one. We minimally use this one, but this one might be used somewhat frequently. So this is that add steps and services. Once you click on that, it really walks you through this process. See, step 1, step 2, step 3. So we'll start with step 1 of clicking add services. And you get this window of all the different services that might be available. There's also a search box right here in the corner. So I'm going to say this person needed, additional tutoring, and I start typing it, and you can see it populates. So we went from 43 entries to 1, and it just took me half a second, right? So on the right here is add. So I'm going to click on that. It says this, the notification says this service has been added to the planned services section. So now it appears here in step 2. If I go back to the plan overview, I will not see this because it has not been assigned to a goal yet. You see how it says assign this to a goal? So there's nowhere for this to appear yet. So what I need to do is click on the blue pencil next to the word tutoring. I'm going to click on that blue pencil, and it's going to take me into this service. So I'm in the tutoring service. This is what it looks like. There's the status default tab. There's a service provider tab and an attendance tab. Again, we do not use attendance for anything but training services. The service provider, so if some organizations have, as part of their budget, have a dedicated, a lot of time a retired teacher that they have brought in to tutor, and that's an excellent resource and way of doing it. So they might keep track of the provider that they're using. But other times, if it's simply one of their caseworkers and a person that's already identified within Illinois Works role, they don't have to enter the service provider tab information. But here we are on the status default tab, and the first thing to do would be to enter a goal. And so again, with the grantee manual as our guide, we know that tutoring services are part of student support services. Those are the academic needs. And I might say I'm going to move this to a started status. And I'm going to enter my planned dates. Maybe this is something that just started this week and will go to almost to the end of the month. And this could be on this could be additional basic math instruction. And I'm entering this note here just to give you guys an idea, but I'm going to copy it because when I click update customer service, it's going to require me to add a case note right now. And so I can simply drop it in here. And so it's already there. And this is, so I've added tutoring as a student support service. Again, I'm going to select save case note without sending a message and click add my case note. I'll get a green notification saying success, that the service itself was updated successfully. So now I'm going to click back on my main tab here, training services tab. And I'm going to scroll down. And you'll notice before we only had 2 services here that had related steps. Now student support services has a related step. And I can click on these linked texts, and it will expand to show me my tutoring. If I select it, it'll bring me right back to where I just was. And, I could mark it as a successful completion. and enter a completion date. Right? Or, as I mentioned, if for some reason we went to offer the tutoring to this person and they said, oh, you know what? No, I no longer need it. I would change this to evaluated, not required. And I would enter a note as to why. I would click update customer service and I would paste that note back into the case note. That is how you manage additional services. So whenever you need to add a transition service, a wraparound, additional wraparound service, or a student support service, that's how you add and manage those. Stipends, you don't add those services. There's already a stipend listed there. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And again, training services should pre-populate from at the grantee level, and those are entered in by your grant manager. All right. And then I'm going to just very quickly click on the update log. Again, it's not used most of the time, but you can see here it has tracked all of the things that I have just done, including entering that new service. Okay, any questions about this practice session?
No questions, Dan.
All right. Either I lulled everyone to sleep or we were able to follow along. I had mentioned that this module 6 was kind of long, so we're going to go ahead and take a break here. I'm not looking at the time a great deal. I think we have. Do we have time for it? How about it's 11:07. How about we come back at? Do we have 10 minutes?
Yeah, it's up to you, Dan, if you think based on the information we're sharing in the next half, if we can get through it all within that time frame, we can do 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't we do a 10-minute break? Come back at 11:17, please. Thank you, everyone. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had an enjoyable break. Got up, stretch your legs. Pretty nice outside. Hopefully, if you didn't get outside, at least look out a window and enjoy some of that sunlight. Okay. So as you can see, we're on the section where we're going to talk about setting up training dates. I've mentioned this a couple of times that we need to set things up at the cohort level. So I'm going to show you where that is and what that looks like. Some of you may not have access to this. Again, this is generally more of the program administrator access. So if you don't have access to this part, obviously just watch so you get an understanding of how this impacts things downstream. If you do, pay close attention. Again, we're not ready for you to go in and update your training information dates yet, but this will be how you do it once you're given the green light by your grant manager. So we're going to start with, accessing the cohort level dates of instruction by going up to the navigation bar and selecting the folder icon provider information. So that was highlighted in red there. And once you do that, it'll take you to a grantee details screen in which, if we can go back one slide, please. There we go. So that'll take you to the provider information screen. So you can see that that's what's actually being displayed as though someone had already clicked on that provider info tab in the navigation bar. And then there are four tabs there. We've selected the third one, grantee details. So once you're on the grantee details screen, you may need to select your provider grantee name from the drop down there. There's two drop downs, one's for ILWRS and then one's for your grantee organization. And that will take you to the provider information for your organization. All the way at the bottom, you'll have to scroll all the way to the bottom, and that is where we're going to find information about your cohort information. So on the next screen, we'll show that. This is what the very bottom of that screen looks like. For most of you, some of you may not have cohort information there at all yet. That is something that's being worked on by SIU and will be established for you shortly. But most of you should have 2024 information. It should go from cohort 1 to cohort 6, even though none of you are using that many cohorts. We just pre-populate it with 6 for all grantees. And that's where we're going to walk through and pretend we're selecting cohort 1 there. Once you select that, you're on the cohort details screen. And this is where you would enter your start and end dates. Or this is actually where you'll both begin and end your cohort on this screen, right? So as I mentioned, we're going to finalize your final curriculum form. Your grant manager is going to make IWRS mirror that form. And then you're going to go in and enter the planned start and end dates for each of your training modules. That's what is outlined there in red, the start and end dates. Entering this information here, as I mentioned before, will save your data entry team from having to enter that exact same information for every single participant in every training module. So it all needs to be entered. So it can be either entered once or once for every single participant. Your grant manager will enter the required total number of hours for each training module based on that final curriculum form. So that's what's outlined in green there. So it's important that you do not enter anything on this screen until your grant manager has provided you with confirmation that you may do so. So once your grant manager has provided that approval, then you can come in, enter the start and end dates if you have them. If you're not sure yet, then you may need to leave them blank, or you can put estimated dates. Again, they can always be changed later. So for now, as I mentioned, this is not your test participant, right? We've all created those test participants, or a lot of us, and you could manipulate things, add that tutoring to the student support services. But what we're going through is your actual grantee level cohort information. So we're not going to enter any practice information here. Um, so once this has been completed, you'll be able to actually start adding attendance and enrolling participants and adding the attendance. So we saw in the last section that the training and services tab is where attendance is entered, post-assessment scores, and credentials are entered. We didn't do a dive yet into training services. That's because I wanted to save it for this section. There are two ways to add attendance. There's bulk attendance and individual attendance. So we're going to kind of walk through both ways. Individual attendance will be the one you're most commonly using at the front end until some of the bulk attendance features are finalized. But you'll start by selecting your participant's profile, then selecting that training and services tab. That's the one that was created when they enrolled, and you see that outlined in red at the top. It starts at that status default section, and you'll go down and you'll select a given training service. So I think this one looks like it's first aid CPR. So you'll select that, and you'll be on the status default tab for the first aid CPR. And you'll notice again, I have two items, one outlined in green and one outlined in red. The one in green is carrying over from the cohort detail screen that we just saw. Those are the total number of hours that the first aid CPR course requires based on the final curriculum form. So that's what your grant manager had entered on that cohort details screen, and it will carry over now onto this screen. So you won't be able to change that or modify that. If you enrolled an individual before your grant manager established that will be, it'll be blank, but you won't be able to manipulate anything because the system will be looking for information there. So it's very important that we take those steps slowly. But at any rate, that's what that green box is. It's the attendance hours required per your curriculum form. The red box are the actual number of hours that the person attended the program. So you'll simply, based on the assigned attendance rosters, you'll enter that in there. This is a much faster, much more streamlined method of entering attendance than what participants or what grantees were required to do last year. So I know some of you had made reference to that meeting in Naperville where you talked to some organizations about the data entry, and they said it was certainly a lot, and it is. It's extremely important that we have all of that information because this is a performance-based reimbursement grant. But this was probably 50% of the data entry that they were talking about, and we've reduced it to a single time entry. So it's a much improved system for all the grantees. So one of the reasons we were able to do this was because we've come up with a new method for updating attendance rosters, which we'll talk about in just a couple moments. So be very sure that you're following the attendance policy, that you're keeping accurate attendance rosters. The grantee manual has more information. There are attendance rosters in the appendix of the grantee manual that you should use. If you have a different attendance roster system, you need to look at what is in the grantee manual and make sure that yours has all of the information and more. And as long as it has all the information, then you can submit your organization's attendance roster to your grant manager for approval. But unless you have approval to use your attendance roster, you must use the Illinois Works pre-apprenticeship program rosters that are in the grantee manual. So again, the attendance rosters will be added at that provider information tab where we just were, that we saw some of that information, where we entered the dates on the grantee level or on the cohort level. And it was designed to simplify the roster entry into IWRS on a per cohort basis. So again, you're only going to enter attendance rosters for the entire cohort. You're not going to do it for each participant. So let's look at how we would enter this attendance for the participant now that we're in the attendance profile. we're on the training services tab. Under the training services goal, you would select the service you're looking to enter attendance for. That's this first aid CPR. And then you would enter in the total attendance hours that they participated in. Now, keep in mind that that must be at least 80% or more of the required hours. So if first aid CPR requires 10 hours, then the total attendance hours, the actual attendance that the individual must have had for that course would at least be 8 hours. Some modules, some training services require 100% attendance. OSHA 10, for example, they must attend at 100%. So it's at least 80%, and in some cases 100%. There's another method of entering attendance, and that's through a bulk attendance that was just developed by Southern Illinois University. This tool allows for users to make attendance entries for multiple participants from a single interface rather than accessing one participant's profile at a time. So this entry tool will be accessed through a reports icon, which we'll show you in a moment. And that's on the navigation bar. Once you select those reports, you would filter in through a report called the IWRS Service Report Attendance. Look, I'm scrolling through in advance. Okay. The slides are a little bit out of order for how we're going to discuss it, but that's okay. So once you select that service report attendance, it's going to take you to this customer services report. And you will filter your desired criteria. So typically you would select the cohort that you're looking to enter attendance for. Again, if you have multiple grants, you would have to first select your grantee profile that you want to use. You'd click filter, and then it will display all of the services that are open. Some that have not started, some that have started. And under instructional service, you would select the participants that you are looking to enter attendance for. You know, on this screen here outlined in red, there are 40 that have not started their instructional service. So you select that 40 is actually a hyperlink. When you click that, it will take you to the attendance report for those participants. So as you can see, that there would be a, can we go back 2 screens, because the slides are a little bit out of order here. So it would then take you to this screen, right? This is where you will see in the table the customer names. So it may be a little misleading. There's actually a customer named Jane Dorr and then a customer named January, February. That's the actual customer name. You can see the activities, Module 1, the Illinois Works Pre-Apprenticeship Program orientation for both Jane and for January. And as we move across, we see outlined there in red the status. You'd be able to update the status of the participants training module from planned not started to started/open or to a successful completion. You would not be able to update the status to an unsuccessful completion or to evaluated not required. That's because this system will not require you to enter a case note, right? Obviously, you're updating multiple people at one time. You can't possibly enter case notes for each of those people. And since evaluated not required or unsuccessful requires a case note, you're not able to update the statuses to those statuses and this bulk entry. To the right of that status column are the start and end dates. Again, those are being pulled over from that cohort level, and they can be updated here if necessary. Next to those are the number of hours required, again, being pulled over from that cohort date, similar to what we saw on the individual attendance entry. These are defaulted by what the grant manager has entered from your final curriculum form. And then next to that is the total attendance hours. So again, that's the actual attendance that you're participant had been in class for based on their signed attendance rosters. And so you would enter that information in there. Again, requiring at least 80% of the required hours in order to move that to a successful completion. Now, one thing to note, that before you would be able to update to a successful completion, the post-assessment for that training module would have had to have been entered into the person's profile. And that is still done on an individual level. We are looking at putting bulk assessment updates in here as well. If the program required a credential, such as first aid, CPR, or OSHA 10, then those would have had to have been uploaded into the individual participant's profile, and then the credential entered, and then you can update the training module to a successful completion. Finally, there's the final column there is a checkbox to notify the grant manager that their attendance total, the total attendance hours that you entered, include a makeup session. So the point of that is for us to know, say for example, the training session for orientation was supposed to be March 11th and March 12th. And that's the roster upload, the attendance roster upload. But this individual had to come back for a makeup session on March 15th. By checking that makeup session box, we know to look for an additional attendance roster for that individual. And more so for when the program might be audited 3 years down the line, right? It's a way for them to be able to understand what has been entered and why. All right, so that's the bulk attendance entry. Here's how, again, this is the reporting aspect of how you get to that by selecting that service report attendance, and that will take you to the customer service report where you will ultimately access the attendance report. So if we can move to the next screen, I think we'll talk about post assessments. Here we go. So the post assessments, again, right now, each training module is required to have a scored post assessment. To add a post assessment, we'll follow the same path that we used earlier when we looked at the different goals, the wraparound services, transition services, student support services, stipends, and then the training. So we'd go into under the training services goal and select the training module that we wish to add the post assessment for. But instead of clicking that the attendance subtab, we would select the post assessment subtab, and it would take you to what you see on the screen here. You would simply click on the add post assessment, and a pop-up window would appear where you would enter the name of the training module, the post assessment score, and the date the post assessment was taken. So it's important to remember that every module must have a scored post assessment, including orientation. Orientation is the only post assessment that can be pass-fail. A score of 100% can be provided to participants if they complete during orientation their commitment agreement, their wraparound service assessment, their orientation career assessment, etc. All other post assessments must have either a written or performance based assessment. So then after the post assessments, we also wanted to talk about stipend entry. Once stipend services, when you enter stipends, you will go to the training services plan overview and scroll down to the career plans, select that show next steps, and it will show you the stipend program service. When you select that, the stipend service screen will appear, and you'll navigate to the dollar value service subtab. So I think we see that on the next screen. So this, yep, here we go. So that after clicking on the Add Services Cost button, another pop-up window will appear, and it will ask you to enter the payment method. So some organizations use checks, some use direct deposits. So we obviously, highly recommend a very traceable method of providing those stipends. Then the final payment is the date in which the payment was made to the participant. The total stipend amount, that's the amount of the payment, right? So whether you're doing this on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, you'll want to enter that amount that you're paying the participant. And then the stipend rate per instructional hour. So this should be the same for all of your training services. This is outlined in the grantee manual. It doesn't matter whether you're paying a stipend for 1 hour of hand tools instruction, or 1 hour of OSHA 10, or 1 hour of worksite instruction. The per instructional hour rate must be the same. So it's whatever was agreed upon in your budget, in your grant agreement. That'll be the instructional rate for all instructional services. And again, referring back to that final curriculum form, that is the maximum amount that can be paid for any given training service. So, for example, if you had a hand tools course and your agreed upon duration of that hand tools course per the final curriculum form, per your grant agreement, is 10 hours. But for whatever reason, there was a lot of good discussion. There were some great questions. There were some additional practice time that was given. That course went for 12 hours instead of 10 hours. You can only pay stipends from Illinois Works funds for 10 hours. That's what is agreed to on the final curriculum form. So that's why we've made note several times here of what the required hours are versus what your actual hours of attendance are, right? The required hours are the maximum that can be paid for stipends for that training service. You can pay less, right? If they were supposed to attend 10 hours, but they only attended 8, well, then you can only pay them a maximum of 8 hours of stipends for that class. Also noting that there must have been a performance element to that. Again, this is not a wage, so they can't just earn it for attending for 8 hours. But they cannot they cannot receive more than that 10 hours if that's the amount that was decided for that particular training service. So after you would click save, that stipend payment would appear in the current service costs table, where it will provide a running total of all of your stipend payments. But again, stipends are required to be entered into IWRS as they are paid, and the requirement of the stipend policy is that they are paid on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
Dan, would now be a good time to interrupt with a quick question?
Sure.
Okay, so Kiara asked, is it up to the grantee how the stipends are dispersed? And I'm not sure if she means the method. So Kiara, feel free to unmute yourself to elaborate.
Yes, I think he just answered. So they have to be paid on a weekly or bi-weekly basis.
Yes. Yep. The frequency must be weekly or bi-weekly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So a little bit more about stipend tracking. I know I just talked a lot about it. The stipends are one of the few things that are actually mentioned in the Illinois Works Job Program Act. So the actual law requires that all participants are provided with a stipend for instructional hours. And so that's why, the grantee manuals, obviously the 2024 grantee manual in this case, stipends are, explained in detail. They must be performance-based, requiring both attendance and performance metrics. And so we are requiring that those are updated in Illinois Works as they are paid out. So any final questions about stipends?
No, nothing else in the chat.
Okay. Great. So we're going to go back to that cohort details section, because remember I said that really your program, your cohort will start there before instruction, and once everyone has graduated, that'll be the final step you do as well. So you'll go back here and you'll upload your final attendance roster. So certainly attendance rosters should be uploaded as they are completed. So if you complete hand tools, then that attendance roster should be uploaded. When you complete power tools, that attendance roster should be uploaded. They shouldn't all be uploaded at the end. That is how we required it to be done in 2023. But moving forward, as we've stated, IWRS is meant to be updated in real time. So as those rosters become available for a given cohort, they should be uploaded. So it's done on the cohort or on the grantee details screen under the cohort. So we saw this before, where you would select the folder from the navigation bar. That takes you to the provider info tab or screen, and then you would select grantee details. You'd scroll all the way to the bottom and you'd access that cohort details screen again. From there, once we're on the cohort details screen, I think that's the next one. Once we're on the cohort details screen, and you might, a lot of that's familiar. We just discussed how you would enter your start and end dates there. But here we're highlighting that there's also a button for upload attendance roster. So that's outlined in red, and you see that that opens up a pop-up window in which you can then select the service, the training service that you are uploading the attendance roster for, add a description of it, and then once you click upload, that roster will then appear underneath the training service for which it's related. So again, I'm going to walk everyone through these things again, but before I move to that kind of live view, do you have any questions about uploading those attendance rosters?
No questions in the chat.
All right. Let me set up my screen again. Okay. So, first thing I'm gonna open up another window just because it makes sense to do so. All right, so we're gonna start with understanding how we set up our cohorts. So again, that's this folder icon in the navigation bar, and I'm going to select that. That takes me to the provider information screen, and there are 3 tabs here. These were discussed in IWRS session 1. So I'm not going to go through them other to say that we're here to access the grantee details. So I'm going to select the grantee details screen, and then you may have to select project. Mine defaults to ILWRS. I do need to select which grantee I want to view. So I'm going to take my Chicago test provider. Again, mine is a practice one. None of yours are. So if you're following along kind of the steps, please don't enter any data in here, because whenever you're on this provider information tab and the grantee details, that is live to your grant. So obviously you can definitely come in here and update things. We saw in grantee manual session 1 that all this information can be updated. The training programs can be updated. That will allow you to more quickly enter credentials, but this isn't an area to practice. So I'm going to scroll down all the way down to those cohorts that I mentioned. We've seen this a couple times now, and I'm going to concentrate on 2024. So I'm going to select cohort 1, 2024. And you'll notice from before break, I had enrolled an individual, and they had some of their training modules had start and end dates. Again, that's because this is a practice profile. I was able to fill out some of them and not all of them. And so that's why what we saw on my test participant. But this is where you would enter that information. Again, once your grant manager has completed updating this information and this information, this all gets entered by your grant manager. And once they're done with that, they will notify you to go ahead and enter your start and end dates here. All right. It's funny. Well, I get a lot of questions. Is it okay for me to enter my start and end date? Again, you will get notified. So unless you've received a positive notification, you do not have, you should not be updating your information in here yet, which also means other than test participants, you should not be enrolling anyone into IWRS. Do not move anyone from an applicant status to an enrolled status except for test participants, please. All right, so this is where you would enter that information. Again, this is the start and end screen for instruction. So once this has been entered, then you can begin the process of enrolling individuals and entering their training services and other services. So I'm going to go back to that. We had talked about how do we enter attendance for an individual. So I'm going to pick one of my enrolled, individuals, and we'll go with a date. Again, we mentioned you select your participant, you select the training services or tab. Then scroll down to those 5 goals. And here I'm going to click on Show Next Steps next to the training services. From there, I'm going to select one so that I can enter attendance. I was talking about hand tools before, so I'm going to go ahead and select that one. So this is what I had shown you before. I'm going to do this in a little bit different order, though. I'm going to start with talking about that post-assessment. Remember, we had said that in order to update a training module to successful completion, they must have at least a 70% score on their post-assessment. So I'm going to select the post-assessment subtab and take care of that first. And it's fairly simple. I simply click on the Add Post-Assessment and the pop-up appears for me to enter this information. Now, it asks for the name, the score, and the date. I cannot stress this enough. The name is this isn't necessarily what you would enter as a name, but the name is the training module, not the name of the person, right? So this becomes awfully confusing later if your program administrator pulls reports and wants to see, oh, which training module has my entire cohort struggled with, and instead of seeing an actual program name, they see, Bill Testerson or something, right? So, and that's just internally. Obviously, for the Office of Illinois Works, seeing that somebody passed a training module called, Dave Wilkerson doesn't mean anything to us. We need to know the actual name of the course that they passed. So this name must be the name of the course. The score, again, has to be over 70% in order to be considered passing. And then you'd enter the date that they, took the post assessment or received that score. So you'd save it, and then you can see it immediately populates in this table down here. Some individuals might need multiple assessments to achieve a passing score, and that's fine. So then they would just schedule a makeup session, and you would then update with a new post assessment. You wouldn't delete the old one, you would just update with a new one. Once that has been completed, if a credential was necessary, we would go to the Earn Credential tab and enter the credential. If you had properly set up the training program on the Provider Information tab, there would actually be an option to add the credential here instead of adding it manually, and it would be a simple radio button click, and then you would add it. Otherwise, you will add them manually, which is where you would then just fill out the information. And again, this would only be for the ones that are required. You do not enter a credential for every single module. So it's only for, say, OSHA 10 that you would, enter a credential, or NCCR core. And it's important to note that it's NCCR core, not NCCR, right? The name of the actual credential that you're receiving is NCCR core. So you would enter that here. It's a copy of a certificate that you're receiving from NCCR. The date attained, that would be the last day of the cohort. For an NCCR core, it's a it's a certificate. The institution. So that is the provider, right? So is this coming from IWE? Is it coming from some training provider that you hire, or are you the training provider? So what's the institution? And then a quick description. It would just be, completion of NCCR core. And you would click save. I didn't do it here because obviously you need to place your credentials on the proper module. I wouldn't put OSHA 10 here on hand tools, and I wouldn't put first aid CPR on hand tools. They need to go on the first aid CPR module or the OSHA 10 module. And your final MC3 or NCCR core credential should be placed on the last module of the series. So not necessarily chronologically that you completed it, but module 9, I think it's material handling, I think is module 9 for NCCR. That's the last one in the series. So that's where the credential would be placed. And the importance of that is that if in 1 year someone comes to look for that credential, they're not going to know that you actually, held module 9 in the 3rd week of your cohort out of 12 weeks. And they're not going to know that the last one you actually did was power tools. So they're not going to know to go to module 105 and look for a credential under power tools, but they know sequentially that module 109 would be the last module of the sequence. So that's where it will be placed. You can talk to your grant manager more about that if you have specific questions when it comes time to enter those in. But then we'll go to the status default tab. And again, that's where you will actually enter attendance. And you would change the status here to completed and the total attendance hours to completed. So you would say this has been a successful completion. This person actually attended 10 out of 10 hours. You would click update customer service. Again, we're looking to remove this this case note because yes, it was a successful completion. So it's really not adding any value to have you enter that information. But for now, it's required. And so we would do that. And you can see that this is now a successful completion. So that's how you enter, that's how you maintain a training service profile with the post assessments, with the credentials, and then with attendance. Do we have any questions about this? Because this is, again, the bulk of your data entry.
No questions, Dan.
Okay, excellent. We had also talked about bulk attendance, and so I'm going to walk through that. Again, that's not set up for any of you right now, so there won't be anything for you to actually walk through, but we'll take a look at that. So up here, we will go to reports. Again, some of you may not have access to this at all, but we can select reports. And then I'm going to scroll down to, oh, wait. I'm going to use the project category to select ILWRS and then select the service report attendance. So when I select service report attendance, as I mentioned, it actually takes you into the customer services report, in which you then need to filter for your cohort, say. So I've selected my grant name, my cohort, and I'm going to click filter. And this will show me all of the services, including like that tutoring service that I just had opened. That'll be on this second page, and the instructional services. So here are the instructional services. That's where you would enter attendance. And I'm going to go ahead and go to that, and you'll see that this is where now I could enter bulk attendance for January, or for who else do we have in here? For Dave test, for February 2024 test, and these could all be entered in. It's important to note again that all the other items, the post assessments, any credentials that would be necessary, would have had to have been entered on the individual profile first. And then you would come in here, you would update the status, update the start and end dates if necessary, and then enter the total number of attendance hours and mark whether or not there was a training session that was necessary. The required number of hours, that is, again, a grant manager column that only they would be able to update. So that's where the bulk attendance will be updated. All right, I'm going to move back one last step. And we're going to go back all the way back to where we started, and that is under the provider information. So I've gone back up to the folder on the navigation bar. I'm on my provider information tab. I'm going to go back to grantee details. And scroll all the way down again to my cohort. Again, this is where we started, but now I'm highlighting the uploading of attendance rosters. So we have here, again, this is a very simple format where we can click that, and then we select the actual training service that this was posted under. So maybe I have an update to the attendance, to the orientation. Maybe there was a makeup session for that. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. It's thinking, it's trying to find my files. So here I have my second orientation roster, so I can select it. I click upload. And then after the screen refreshes, now I can see it's uploaded both of the attendance rosters under that particular training module. So that'll be how you finish every training module, by entering the rosters. Again, this is just done one time at the grantee level for each cohort, for each training service. All right. We had also talked about stipends, I believe, right? So let me go do that. I'm going to show how we would enter stipends. So I've come back into a given participant's profile, and under training services, plan overview, I'm going to scroll down back to those 5 goals, and here is our program stipends. and I'm going to select the program stipend. From here, remember I said there are 3 tabs. The dollar value of service is the subtab that we're looking for, and this is very simple. We select that, select add service cost, and here I can select whether it was a check, direct deposit, some other form of payment. Check is obviously going to be the most common. I select the date that the stipend was paid. So maybe it's March 8th, the stipend amount. In this case, it's being paid weekly. So, and they attended 10 hours that week, $142.50. The stipend rate itself is $14.25 for this particular grantee. And again, that's on all their training services. And so once I click save, the total is going to update from $525 to now it has updated to $667.50. So it gives a running total of the stipend amounts. So it's important that this ultimately, matches exactly what your accounting office says you have paid out. And it's important that you have attendance rosters to essentially back up these stipend payments. So any questions before we go back to the slide deck? Any questions about anything we've covered in IWRS?
There are no questions in the chat.
Okay, so I definitely encourage you to, practice with your test participants and, add a stipend in there. You can manipulate some of the training possibly in there. Definitely add a wraparound service, add a transition service, add a student support service, and play around with that before you actually start enrolling participants. All right, our final section before we get to the feedback is more information about some of the reports. So by the end of this section, you'll understand where the participant red flag reports are, accessing that that academic information through the student support needs report and the attendance and post-assessment reports. Describe how the work plan report can help guide your program performance. We're going to talk a little bit about that, and then utilizing that export report as I discussed on the front end. So for our reporting tools, really we start with the student support needs report and also utilize that attendance and post-assessment score report that provides kind of the individual participant detail. So the student support needs report is located off of the main page. So we talk about that main page being where we can access participant profiles, but instead of being on, in the search of that or in that table, it's next to the export report. So you see it highlighted in red there, student support needs report. There's another way to access this report, and it's going through the report icon on the navigation bar. And you would simply select that and then scroll down to the student support needs report. It's the exact same report, whether you access it here or through the actual reports tool. When you select the student support needs report, it allows you to filter program information. You can filter by date, customer enrollment status, service providers, a particular service name or flag type. So if you only want to see post-assessment flags, or if you only want to see attendance flags, you can certainly do that. So if during the process of entering attendance and post-assessments, if participants fall below those thresholds, IWRS will add a flag to the participant's profile that will actually be seen on the overview tab of each individual participant's profile. But then this report aggregates that information and provides an overview of all the training services by all of your participants that identify which of those have a red flag. So it's helpful for both your data entry coordinators, your data management validators, and program administrators when they're trying to kind of gain a bird's eye view of the red flags in the system and identify, where, student support or data entry, support is needed. So looking at the reporting tools, the other report there is the attendance and post-assessment scores report. In the navigation bar to get here, what we're looking at is the icon for reports, and you would scroll down until you locate the attendance and post-assessment. Right now, what we see on the screen is the other way of accessing that student support services report or needs report. So I think the next screen will show that here we access the attendance and post-assessment scores report. When you select this, again, it's going to be blank for all of you, I think, unless maybe the person you just added today might populate some information there, but it's really based on attendance dates. It allows you to see by participant, flags or scores or required hours. So while the previous report was useful to see, which of those courses had flags, this report provides a more detailed attendance information per participant. And so you can really drill down to see not only were they entered, but were they entered accurately. So you could kind of compare it to your list of scores that you think each person should have. So it's a good way to validate the data entry as well. So the last report that we wanted to talk about is the work plan and report. So this is located again off of that main page. It's the third tab. And when you click that, it takes you to a report where you can see cohort specific information regarding the timeline and the metric goals for each cohort. So I talked a little bit about this at the beginning, that your grant manager, based on the work plan, will enter in for cohort 1, what is the anticipated start date and end date, and how many enrollments were you scheduled to have, and how many completions were you scheduled to have, and how many transitions. And then it will include that information, but then also it'll populate with information regarding the number of people that are actually enrolled in IWRS. So it will give you an initial view of how you're measuring up against the timeline and goals set in the work plan. It's important to note that the transition metrics are something that we need to verify. The grant managers need to verify, and those are only verified upon uploading third-party documents. So that first aid certification, the OSHA 10 certification, the MC3 certification, or ICCB or NCCR core. And this is all in the grantee manual. I do want to highlight one last thing. I've been saying it several times, but I want people to understand the difference. In our terminology, you'll have a first aid CPR certificate, right? That's the card or the document that you received from, say, Red Cross, showing that person completed that program and they're certified in first aid CPR. That certificate gets scanned and uploaded. A credential is a digital badge that you will enter on the participant's profile saying that, yes, they achieved that and that we have uploaded the certificate. So there are certificates and there are credentials. Credentials are those digital badges. So I wanted to highlight that difference since we've been talking a little bit about them today. All right, finally is we have the export tool. And I mentioned this at the beginning, that this is the one that your grant managers use to pull compliance data so that we can identify at a moment in time who was in an enrolled status, who was in an applicant status, who was in a completed status. And I think I mentioned this during some of the other training sessions. Keep in mind that you get to enter those statuses. So from the vantage of a performance-based grant, we refer to those as claimed statuses. When you update a status, when you move someone from applicant to enrolled, we refer to that as a claimed status. Then your grant manager uses this export report to identify all those claimed statuses, and then we verify the data in IWRS to then verify that status. So you have a claim status and then you have a verified status. When you click on this export report, it allows you to select which of the fields. There are over, I think, 40 data elements now that you can select. There's participant demographic information. There's training information. There are red flags that we identify in this export report as well as transition information. So once you have selected which of the fields you are looking for, you would scroll to the bottom of this selection and choose export, and it will download as a CSV file, which you can import into Excel. It'll just import automatically into Excel. So any questions about these reports that we've discussed?
No questions.
No questions again. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and do a pretty quick walkthrough of some of these reports. Okay, I'm going to start with from our main page here. I'm just going to update this so that it doesn't time out on me. All right, from our main page, we're going to talk about the student support needs report, the export report, and the work plan report. I'm going to start with the first one, the student support needs report. So I select that. As we mentioned, with any report, obviously you need to select your criteria. So I'm going to keep under service the grantee, the test provider. I'm going to give it a date range of January 1st to today. And I can select different enrollment statuses. I'm going to keep with just enrolled. And flag types, I can either have attendance flags or post-assessment flags or show any flags. And then I would click filter. And then this would identify any attendance flags that are available, or any of the flags that are populating. Again, these are based on the dates of instruction that we entered on that cohort level or that you maybe have updated. And based on those, if it's expecting to see a post-assessment or expecting to see updated attendance, it will identify a flag there. So I can go, if I select one of these linked texts, say Amy Testerson here, I will go into her basic safety module 2, and we can identify why there is a attendance issue. This was the old style of attendance where we would enter it on a weekly basis, actually on an hourly basis. So you can see it was much more involved. But the bottom line is she does not have any attendance entered. And it was expecting to see 10 hours at a minimum entered, and the dates have already passed. So that's why the system has flagged this as being an attendance issue. Let's see here. So I'm going to see if I can go back into that report. There we go. So these reports help you because you can go directly into a report and directly then into where there is what's causing the flag, where there is an issue. All right. Now we're going to go up into the navigation bar and continue with the reports. So I'm going to click back on reports and look for the attendance and post-assessments report. So we were just on the student support needs report. I'm going to go to the attendance and post-assessment report here. So when I select that, it defaults to ILWRS, but I still need to select my grant and I can filter it. These take a while because this is going to generate all participant names. Remember I said this was the very detailed one. All detailed names, the modules, the attendance, the post assessments will appear here. So I'm not sure that we'll wait for this to appear. Sometimes it takes, up to 2 minutes. And there we go. But you can see it. This is a quick way of, if I have all of those scores in hand, maybe on a different screen, I can come here and do a data validation, or I could export this information and let Access database or Excel do the data validation for me. So I'm kind of updating and making sure that everything was entered correctly. So again, you can export all this information out to do your analysis and data validation. All right, I'm going to go back to the main page, and you can see we're in reports, and there isn't a button that just takes me to the main page. So what I do is I select groups up here. I discussed this at the very beginning of the session. I select groups. This will take me back to the group search, which once it's populated, I will select ILWRS right here. And that will take me back to the main page. So the second to last report we had talked about was the work plan report. That's here, this third tab. There's not going to be anything there because, again, you don't have your cohort set up. And even if you did, you wouldn't have your work plan information set up, but that will be where you can compare your current performance to the planned performance. Ultimately, that's the same information we're going to send you on a monthly basis with your compliance reports. So, so that might be an additional way for you to keep track of that information. And then finally, the export report. We talked about this several times. Whatever you have on your screen, so I have 52 entries. If I click export, it's going to download information about those 52 entries. If I only want to see information about people that are currently in an enrolled status, I would refilter this information, and now I only have 16 entries. And so now if I did a export, it's just going to export those 16 individuals that are in that enrolled status. And I can just take everything, or I can select just the individual data elements that I want. I want customer status, I want birth date, address, phone number, maybe I want their email address, the city and the state and zip code and county, depending on what you're looking for. If you have multiple grantee profiles, you might want to select the grantee. Down here, just after veteran status, I always find the assigned cohort. So that's generally a pretty important one that you want to download almost every time, so you understand which cohort they're assigned to. It'll be especially important after you start having multiple cohorts. And then you would select export, and it would generate that as that Excel file. So any questions about these reports that I just talked about?
No questions.
All right. Are there still any attendees? Anyone want to throw up an emoji to just let me know that you're still there? All right, thank you. So I'm gonna hand this back over to Anna, and we're going to jump into Mentimeter and do our post-session evaluation. So please stick around and do that. It's extremely important to us.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, for sticking in there. Very dry, but you know, when you actually need to do it, you need to know how to do it. So we are really happy that you could make it today. Please join the Mentimeter. As I've said before, it's really important to us to get your feedback. You may have already noticed that we've been making improvements to these onboarding sessions as we've gone along as a result of your feedback. So please keep it coming. You can click on the link that Monica's put into the chat, that menti.com, et cetera, link. It'll take you straight there. You can also just type in, if you want, www.menti.com. You can do it on your phone as well as on your computer. And the access code is up here right now in case you're doing it that particular way, 1256-2829. And that number will be at the top of all of the slides. So I'm going to move forward, but just know that it is up there where it says join us at menti.com and use this code. So if you're not already in, then you can do it that way. But please, the easy way is just clicking on that link that is now in the chat. So I'm waiting for people to arrive. I've got 6. I know it takes a minute. From what I understood, sometimes the system is a little bit slow. So we'll just be patient for a second and wait for people to join so that we can get all of your feedback so we don't miss out on anyone's feedback. See, we've got 8. We have a good somewhere between 35 and 40 participants in the room. So please help us out by going to Mentimeter. I see that people are starting to be able to join at a greater rate. We've got 13 in the room. Let's keep going. Dan, this is where we wonder if people are still here. 14. All right, I am going to keep going. So let's move to the first question. Please share your views on this training by rating the following statements from 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. To what extent did it meet your expectations? How likely are you to attend a similar event in the future? And how likely are you to recommend this training to others? All right. We have got, it's, mostly. And so that is great. Glad to see that. We've got, I'll take it. Almost 9 out of 10 for all of it. We are in good shape. Now we have 2 things up. Do we literally only have 3 people have answered this question? We have 3 hearts. Oh, I think maybe that means
No,
that people
Anna, there are 28 respondents on this one. The hearts are
What?
just people who are giving additional feedback.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for the hearts. Wonderful. Let's go to the next question. The course was relevant to what I wanted to learn about this subject matter. To what extent do you agree or disagree with that question? It. So someone says strongly disagree, and most we have agrees, and then we have 1 strongly disagree. I'm going to ask those who have answered strongly disagree or neither agree or disagree. When we get to the point of giving feedback, if you could make sure that you tell us what it is that you did want, because we're going to have a question later where it will be appropriate for you to answer that, and that will be very helpful. All right, let's move on. Do you plan to apply what you learned? People do agree with that. Great. All right, thank you very much. Okay, we do have a couple people who neither agree nor disagree or strongly disagree. We are curious, we got some feedback in the last session, which was excellent, which was, hey, you ask us if we plan to apply what we learned, but you're not asking us why or why not. So what I would say is if you feel comfortable putting it in the chat, then please put your why in the chat, or if you want to wait until later when we have the open text questions, then you can indicate to us at that time. Thank you. All right, let's move to the next one. What improvements might you recommend? And here you go. Here's the perfect place to let us know why it didn't quite hit the mark for you. And thank you so much. I see people are putting an A in there, which we really appreciate because I am looking at that little number that shows us how many people have responded. So if you have no comments, then please feel free to put an A like the others. Ah, okay. Thank you. The Mentimeter drag and drop options are in a super weird order. Did not realize that. We will review that. And then again, more hands-on. The training is useful. Thank you very much. And then hands-on, more hands-on. Thank you. Okay. Allow trainees to conduct hands-on for every section. All right. Thank you very much. Let's move on. Thank you so much for that comment. That DCO is awesome and the training hit the mark. Thank you very much. What did you find effective? If we make changes, what do you recommend we keep? Hands-on examples, highlighting sections, hands-on, interaction and engagement, practice. Thank you so much for that call out for our wonderful teammates. We really appreciate it. The ease of finding things. Yeah, more hands-on with highlighting the key points. Got it. Okay, great. We're at 14. We're going to stick here for another 30 seconds, and sometimes it takes a while to type. Yeah, like when you're able to apply the information. That's great. All right. Feel free to keep typing in here. We're going to move on to the next question. Is there anything else that you think we should know? We'll be patient here since typing takes a minute, collecting your thoughts possibly. And maybe we already covered it in the previous open-ended questions. I'm just going to wait a few more seconds. All right. We're going to close it out. Oh, great. We do have one comment here, couple. As new organization can be a challenge. Yeah, more hands-on is important. Yeah. And it's a lot, but it's simple to follow. Great. Glad to hear it. A lot of information. It lacked hands-on for all components. Thank you. We got that. Wait for their future calls. Yes, if you need additional assistance, yes, we expect it and welcome helping you out. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being partners. Thank you for being great. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for giving us feedback. We are so glad to have you part of our provider network, and we look forward to the I think we have one session left in our onboarding series, and so we look forward to seeing you there, and we look forward to working with you this year. Have a great rest of your day and good week.